Jimmy, how are you, brother?
I'm very well. Thank you.
Can you hear? Oh, can you hear us? Okay, mate.
I can hear you fine. Yeah.
Good. It's
Just
just that
close on YouTube.
I've got that weird Zoom noise, mate. You know when it all goes a bit echoey.
I've got a little bit of background static, but apart from that, I think we're good to go, brother.
Right. Okay. So, good evening to our friends at home. Much love to you all. Thank you for joining it. Joining in, is that a word? Hey, it's a newspeak word. Orwell will be
Uh,
Orwell will be
let's
proud of
make
me,
it a
Jim.
word.
So yeah, thank you everyone
Indeed.
for joining us. It is my Well, I'm Chris Thrall, by the way. For those of you I haven't had the pleasure of meeting, I'm a former Royal Marines Commando turned author, adventurer, explorer, YouTuber, podcaster, um, better future for our kids seeker, if that's such a thing. It's my great pleasure today to be joined by a very dear friend of mine, someone I trust with my life, literally, and I think I am at the moment, um, and that's Jimmy James Harris. So, Jim, how are you, mate?
I'm very well, thank you, brother. And very kind words, and that goes straight back at you, sir. And yeah, it's nice to reconnect, brother. It's been a little while since we did our last couple of Red Pill series, and I think it's fair to say quite a lot's been going on.
Yeah, mate, I'm not big on introductions because I think all that's BBC stuff, and I don't do
I
into.
think we've done it all before, brother, haven't we? We've done it all
Yeah,
before.
but I just think for people that don't know, we kind of met because we've both been guests on Sean Atwood's show.
Yeah.
We've both had very, can we say, checkered histories, and we've used it as an experience to go forward into the future and better ourselves and hopefully better society. So we haven't always been perfect, but then life never is, and the future starts right now, doesn't it? Really.
Indeed, brother. Indeed. Couldn't agree more. Every day starts anew. But I think these days each day gets more chaotic and pandemonious than the one previously. Seems to be the way. God help anyone who's waking up now at this point in the game, all this lockdown. People who have time that they never had before to kind of sit and delve and think. And it's a minefield now. An absolute minefield for misinformation, from disinformation, from the Thrall farms, and God knows what else. We're in amongst it, Chris. We're in amongst it.
Yeah.
And
Jim, can I
I
just
think we've chatted about it before. I think it's worth prefacing before we kind of get into any of it that go on.
Jim, I was just going to chip in, mate. Say, can we speak a bit louder and very clearly?
Oh, okay.
Um,
Let me move my microphone a bit closer. This is my Welsh heritage. You'll have to forgive me. I talk far too fast, and I'm often accused of mumbling, so sorry about that.
no,
Yeah, I
it's
think
okay.
it's
It's just some people
No,
are
no.
people are suggesting we need
That
to reset our router, and I think it's a bit late. A bit late for that now, guys. Can you give us a running commentary
okay.
on if you can hear us better or worse? Because obviously we don't know.
That'll be awesome. Thank you.
Sorry, Jim. Keep
Um,
going, mate.
no, that's absolutely fine. I was just going to say that it's probably worth prefacing the conversation with saying that I know nothing, and to be fair, neither does anyone else. Any information that's out there currently is out there because it's allowed to be out there. And yeah, we're all just digging, we're all just searching, we all just want to know the truth, and we all want to find out, what's going on. And there's so many people digging down into the cracks of all this information. I can't see why between us all we can't get to it one way or the other.
Yeah,
How's that sounding?
yes. Sorry, mate. I'm being a bit distant, friends at home, because Jim, I can hear your sound is not quite right. Have you reset your router lately? Sometimes that.
I'm not sure. I don't think so.
Um,
Interceptor says Jimmy has the issue. Speak for
yeah.
yourself, Interceptor, but no. Jokes aside, if it is, do you want me to?
One sec.
I've never had any issues before. I use this quite regularly.
Yeah.
Someone just said it can hear you fine now.
Yeah, you're sounding better now. So yeah, so basically,
Tell you what, let me to my YouTube. You want me to grab the questions off? Turn that off. That'd be better.
Mate, I can't hear you.
A moment, perhaps that will be a wee little bit better.
Right, try and speak then.
How are we sounding now?
Yeah, you sound okay now. If it goes again, mate, what I'm going to do is I'll just take over the meeting. If you go away, reset your router, and then just log back into the meeting.
Cool. Yeah. All right then. No problem at all. Keep me abreast.
But I think we're okay for a second. So, yeah. Back over to you.
Shall I try that one again?
Yeah, go for it.
Well, I was just saying. I think it's worth prefacing the conversation with saying that, I know nothing. And to be fair, neither does anybody else. Any of the information that is out there now is out there because it's allowed to be out there, Whistleblowers on Netflix, all this kind of stuff, it's a minefield. And what I was saying was I don't see any reason why between us all we can't, get everything on the table, as we say on the old podcast, and find out what is exactly going on, Nobody's got all the answers. Of course they've not, How's that coming through for sound?
Yeah, I think you're okay. If it gets worse again, I'm going to just try and turn your video off and see if that gives us a better signal your end, mate.
Okay.
I think it's that thing where let's stick with what we know when we're trying to go definite on things. There's certain things we know that are the smoking guns that are unavoidable, right? We know that power corrupts, and absolute power corrupts absolutely. That just seems to be a thing, right? So that's a good kind of base to work from. We know what I refer to as the events in New York. Everybody knows what I'm referring to there. We know that took place. Most of us, I think, have pretty much worked out who's behind it, although who's pulling the puppet strings is obviously always going to be a big grey area, let's say.
Phoenicians. Maybe.
And yes, and there's the way the whole system has been set up for thousands of years is just not in the common person's interest. It's not in the interest of the children. The filth that we've been fed through our TV screens for all of our lives is just disgusting. We know what these media organisations are. We know who owns them, and we know that they don't like us. That's evident in the lies that they make about our diet, our education, the pharmaceutical industry, the medical industry, everything that could possibly empower us as the beautiful human beings that we are, this part of this amazing universe, part of the spirit of the universe. They have hidden from us. So these are things we know for definite. It's logical to conclude they've hidden them from us using this system that has evolved through the years, that no doubt goes back to biblical times and beyond, of getting their henchmen, their puppets, their muppets, their thieving, cheating, lying scumbags like the politicians we've seen throughout history, but certainly following what happened in New York, we all saw who got rich off the back of that. So this is the stuff we know. Where the leap comes is with the whole Q thing is just made everything really interesting, hasn't it? But it's also, at the same time, it's made it interesting, given people a bit of hope, including myself, because my jury is always out. I will consider everything. But at the same time, when you see people going rah, 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 holding up Q things at Trump rallies, you think, right? I'm just saying that is a red flag. If it gets in the media, it's a fucking red flag. Sorry, it just is, right? Because the media doesn't like you, it hates you. It would be it couldn't be happier if you and your whole family were locked in a cage for the rest of your lives. Over to you, mate.
Yeah, can't excuse me, can't disagree with anything you said, Chris. But if we're going to get on to at this moment in the game, this is new. We've never seen anything like this. We've only got, so say, a couple of 100 years of recorded history, and anything beyond that is absolutely questionable, you know. But coming back to where we are now, this information age, in the age of information, ignorance is a choice, right, as the saying goes. So, but there's also the case now is information overload. We are at a point now where there's just so much misinformation, the accidental sharing of, you know, incorrect information, disinformation, the purposeful putting out of incorrect narratives or false narratives, your red herrings, putting people down the wrong path. But the Q thing, it's a very clever one. And again, I just want to preface, you know, the whole conversation. I don't believe in anything. You know, I'll consider anything. My mind's so open, my brain falls up most days. But I don't believe in anything. I've got an understanding, my own personal understanding of the universe and how everything works, and that's evolving daily. And you know, I always reserve the right to be wrong about anything and also be corrected. You know, every day is a school day, as we say. So the Q thing, where did it all start? Well,
can you explain that for us, Jim?
Go on.
Can you explain for our friends at home?
Explain what Q?
Yeah, like myself and probably many others, I've only got a very loose understanding of what it is, and I know that you know a lot more, hence that's why I've invited you on the show. Can you just outline for people, how did Q start, what is it, and what are the possibilities?
Well, what I must say, Chris, you have misrepresented me just a little bit there. I don't know loads more than you. I'm pretty much kind of the same as everyone else, trying to put the pieces together. I know a little bit more than yourself. I've got a dear brother in the chat, Mr. Dave Jenkins, dear brother of mine. He knows a lot more than me, and if anyone has specifics, I'm sure they can get into it with him. But for my own personal kind of take on it, the first narrative that I shared was that the white hat, so saying, had used cyber criminals or cyber hackers, if you like, to hack the election to get Trump in, and he was a placeman. Okay, that's an interesting one. And then it went from the draining of the swamp and, you know, these taking down of all these kind of paedophile networks and these child procuring networks over in the States and things like that. But then, you know, it get into the realms of the psyop, and it does smack of all the telltale signs of a psyop, you know. And I think when we look into these people and the bloodlines and all the rest of it, I don't think there's much argument that he isn't of, let's just say, elite bloodlines. But then also on the flip side to that, you know, if he has done horrific things, perhaps there is no coming back from certain acts within the human experience. But then if anyone's familiar with people like Jay Parker, who are victims of this multi-generational satanic family abuse, whose programming broke down and he started remembering horrific things that had been done to him, that he'd done, and he used something called EFT to heal himself. And the reason I mention that is because people say there are no forgiveness for certain things, but if you understand things like MK Ultra, Monarch programming, which is a whole other kettle of fish as well, but this is what's used and done, and this is the kind of fuel for all this kind of elite shenanigans. But my point of that is that if he is being used as a, so say, puppet for the white hats to conduct and carry out this narrative, it's very compelling. I did try to put a link into the chat of I've got it right here, which is the narrative. A couple of the listeners will undoubtedly be familiar with a chap called Charlie Freak, who has turned full circle. Apparently, he was not into the Q stuff initially, and then came full circle and kind of now is. And spent quite a few hours chatting with another called Mark Devlin, kind of breaking it all down. And it's quite a long link. No, it's all code. I'll have to try and put in the comments. But essentially, it is the narrative of how this has all gone down. And there's quite a few pages here. I'm not going to read through it all, but when you break it down, so it starts with like proof of submission to Trump. And it says, relax, Trump already won. He forced the globe to submit to MAGA, or hashtag MAGA, under fear of D-class. Everything you are witnessing now is the dead cat bounce of satanic socialists, and it will wake up billions. And then what it does, it breaks down the chronological narrative of all these symbolical statements made in all these countries of essentially submission to Trump and his kind of QAnon patriots. And you go right the way through it. Even to things like George W. Bush delivering pizza and I think, I want to say Obama, forgive me if I'm mistaken. You're like, hang on a minute, so it's one way or the other. Now, like I said, I can't commit to either way, I'm not sure. I try not to smoke opium, I smoke far too much cannabis, but opium I try to stay away from that one because that will get you into trouble. I'm a bit of a realist, a bit of a nihilist sometimes, is fair to say. But I could go for either narrative, you know? Either one is equally plausible as far as, like, if you take enough time to delve right into it, I must say I'm leaning towards the probably not, you know, let's not forget the world is a stage. These people are all massively controlled from the top. But at the same time, as far as this is just a game, right? This is just a movie, this is just an experience, and they all have to end well, don't they? Otherwise, so who knows, Chris? What's your kind of understanding or kind of take? I know you're no lover of Trump, but you know, there are far more things possible than we can even begin to imagine. That's the way I look at it.
Yeah, Jim, the first thing I'll say is massive well done to people that are even considering any of this, because I've had to live my whole life, certainly the last 20 years, with everyone's been brainwashed, you know, everyone just believed what they saw on their television, and it's made it, you know, it's made it awkward at times for those of us that were blessed with intelligence. It really, it's been quite lonely, so it's good credit to the people that have still been at it all this time. And I'd never put anyone down for wanting to learn about what the possibilities that's going on, because this ain't fricking it, man, is it? This absolute pants situation we've got, this ain't living, you know? I know I talk a lot about paradise in your head, and that's probably why I'm still here, is I'd like to think I found paradise in my head. But that doesn't mean that when I look out the window and I see the fear that they're putting into our children at the moment, and let's not talk about the thing because of getting banned, all right, but people know what we're talking about. To see little kids scared, and to see the vast majority of adults so utterly blind as to what is going on, and buying into this ridiculous narrative as if that, you know, human beings have made it a million years through evolution as this incredible creatures, and yet suddenly in the year of 2020 we can't do it anymore, and we need people like Bill Gates, and we need to, you know, wear things on our body when we go out do you get what I'm saying? It's still, you know, the world is far from right, is what I'm saying. So well done everyone for listening. I also well done everybody for looking at the situation. Also want to say I'm well aware I'm not well versed with Q, and I don't want to go upsetting people going, it's this, it's that, when I'm, you know, I'm only
Nobody
sort
knows.
of on the fringes, because that would not be fair. That's like people that watch a 9/11 documentary at 9 o'clock on the BBC and go, oh, there's fucking idiot conspiracy theory. The BBC told you who it was, you know. It's a guy who lived in a cave in Afghanistan. Do you know what I mean? So I don't want to be that person. What I will say is, I think I've come up with certain knowing, without trying to sound ignorant or conceited, but there's certain little things that I help frame my life. For example, you always hear me say, did you hear it on the television? Yeah. Did you hear it on the news? Yes. Well, then it's completely not true. Right? And so it's interesting because this Q thing, you're obviously not hearing on the television, and when you do, and I watched one of these Jim Jeffries comedy programs on YouTube this evening as part of my research, right? And they were just humiliating, can we call them truthers or alternative thinkers? And give them credit, these alternative thinkers didn't really have their act together, but they're never going to when they're put in a panel purposely to be humiliated in mainstream media, right? One guy's going flat earth, the other guy's going shut up, this guy's going, adrenochrome, this guy's going, what? And they just, it couldn't have made us thinkers look any more idiots, right? I don't care what people think of me, but I'm just saying, when the mainstream media go after things like that, it tells you that there's something in it, right? It's like I've got an easy way to find out if something's true or not. Just go on Wikipedia. If Wikipedia says it's a conspiracy theory, then you know that there's something in it, right? Because we all know who owns Wikipedia. So that raises a kind of a bit of a red flag. In the same way, when I spoke to Rob, and we touched on the pizza thing, the mainstream came out in their, not en masse, because they purposely didn't give that interview, that podcast rather, much exposure, but the ones that did come out, the headline was Robbie talks about ridiculously debunked conspiracy theory Pizzagate. Well, anyone that knows anything about Pizzagate knows it's hardly debunked, is it? In fact, the evidence that you see, or the evidence that's put in front of you through the alternative media, it's pretty bloody convincing, isn't it? The whole thing about did someone eat 4 tons of hot dogs in a month? It's so again, when they talk like this, you can see they're closing ranks and they're trying to make you look like the idiots, because that was the technique that they've used traditionally in the mainstream media. It's why, or what I call the medieval media. It's interesting now that we've got the internet, because I do wonder how much this sociopathic elite, Illuminati, bloodlines, Khazarian mafia, Sabbatean Frankist cult, whoever these people are, I wonder if they bargained on the internet being such a powerful freedom for speech. I'm guessing they probably did. They probably even, they probably were even behind it, right? But so that's what I'm saying. Trump, it's interesting, isn't it? This is a guy that the first thing he said after he got voted into power, one of the first things in a speech to his people, the people that were there cheering and clapping because they had just voted him into his presidency, he stood up and went, yeah, that drain the swamp one. That got him, right? He basically was so arrogant that he'd kidded the masses with these lies that he said, like drain the swamp and send them home and build the wall, all of which was just, what's the word? Propaganda, right? And then he actually went and laughed at the people that believed it in his address to them. This is the kind of person we're talking about. You've also got this Soleimani thing in Iran, where and let's not pretend we know what is behind that or why, but I've heard different things. But he was behind bombing a car full of people. Let's just say people we've been told this. We've been told the mainstream reason why. Then you've got the kind of like say the underground reason why, which is that this Suleiman was opposing oil deals between America and Iran, so he had to go, right? So let's just not forget that Trump did that. He also bombed Syria, and also like has anyone in I'll come on to that separate, slightly different. So this is what I'm saying, that you know, let's not. For me, people can do what they like. You live your life, I'll live mine. But for me, I'm not going to put all my eggs in one basket, Jimmy. Do you get me?
Oh, indeed, be foolish too. Be foolish too. Chris, you covered a multitude of subjects there. So good Lord, where to start? So, as with regards to the, you know, the stuff with the children, as you know, I did an interview with John Wedger, who's kind of hot property at the moment, doing a lot of the stuff with Sean Atwood and putting the stuff out there, and you know, he confirmed himself. Yeah, it's definitely true. There's no breaking any bones about it. It's a cover-up. And what did we see? A certain person on the BBC denying these things. Well, we all know who the BBC spoke, don't we? We don't even need to get into that one. It's there. We all know about it now. I'm kind of seeing this becoming a bit of a, dare I say, clickbait. It seems to be a bit of a, what's the word? What's the expression? It's of the moment. Where are we going with it is the question. You know, the Belgian people went out on their millions with the Justin Dutroux stuff. Nothing ever came of it. So where are we at with all of that stuff? Where's it actually going? A lot of people are actually commenting on, you know, SRA is obviously a facet of it and an element of it. But by the same token, there are massive amounts of lower level, no less detrimental to society. But there are so many other children who are being ignored and not being kind of dealt with. You know, social services. I don't know if you know about the case of Carol Woods, exposing these people, real whistleblowers, not whistleblowers who just bring out information and stuff that's already in the public domain. That's not whistleblower, my friend. People who are on Netflix, whistleblowers from. Come on now, we need to kind of. And as you know, Chris, I always say this woke. It's nonsense. It's ego bullshit. It's a spectrum of awakening, and as I say, people who are waking up now, God, it must be a hell of a mindfuck. But you know, some of us have been kind of doing our thing for a while, and as my dear brother Justin Danneman says, you know, believe nothing, research everything, and patterns will emerge, and you will see what's what. But you can't just, you know, you have to delve deep, and there are layers, and you go through the layers, and then you find, oh, right, okay, and God, this is where at this moment in time now, I think
it's also.
Go on.
I was just going to say, Jim, it's also a known tactic of these magicians, if we can call them that.
Black magicians, if you will.
Yeah, and it is, you know, if the history that I've been told, one of the narratives I've been told is to believe, then it literally is that they're money magicians, you know. But one of the tactics is to throw their own under the bus, you know, to sacrifice the odd sacrificial lamb to make it look like something's being done about something. Yeah, but there's that. There's also, you know, like what's the name? Clinton. She's had her time, mate, isn't she? You know, when she's. Do you know what I mean? She's coming to the end of her usefulness. Clearly, not a very well person, both upstairs and downstairs. The reason I'm saying this is there's other issues in the world that I'm not saying. Obviously, I'm not saying child abuse is not an important issue, but let's also remember it's a symptom as opposed to the cause, right? We need to remember that. This is why, you know, I think certain people, and I'm not saying any names here, are unhelpful in their. Sometimes are unhelpful in their media presence, on their internet presence, because they're so focused on this hand that they're completely blind to this one. And unless this one is tackled, this is just going to continue and continue and continue, right? But what I'm getting to is there's other narratives in play that I feel are way more important to address, and the main one being the lies in our history.
Stuff coming up. But yes, we know it's all bullshit. They've just fed us lies upon lies upon lies, and then this is where we come back to this Tartaria stuff and the mud flood and this most recent kind of societal reset. And it was all new to me, Chris. We're finding these, if you look at the Houses of Parliament and your White House and these kind of buildings, so say Greco-Romano style buildings, which fit the narrative of the Western kind of rise and fall, blah, blah, blah. But then these buildings are everywhere, on every continent, in places where they have no business being, according to our narratives. So the premise that's being put forward is this Tartarian empire was a global, harmonious empire. Whether it was or not, I'm not sure. We can only speculate at this point, but it was definitely a global empire that's been decimated and is still continuing to be decimated. So we're in Yemen now, where we're funding billions of pounds worth of, selling rather, billions of pounds worth of weapons of mass destruction to these countries to decimate Yemen, and they're just destroying the Middle East. There are the narratives for the resources, of course, but also the decimation of the history and the infrastructure and the architecture and the relics and the artifacts. So it comes back to then, these companies are selling billions of pounds worth of weapons, but yet you and I are not allowed to own a handgun. Oh, okay, so how does that work then? Is that not the CEO of a multi-billion pound corporation licensed to sell weapons? So, yeah, corruption is afoot everywhere you look. And I don't know where the remedy is. I think we keep trying to come back to solutions. Where are the solutions? What solutions have we got? And again, coming back to Charlie Freak and another subject, which is they've been discussed on his channel. I'm coming to kind of find information on, which is the chrism oil, and essentially achieving true enlightenment through tantra and semen retention and the 33 vertebrae, which is the 33 comes everywhere, the Freemasonic, and then you get into the 33rd parallels and all this stuff. It's all there, and it's all stuff that's been kept from us, Chris, to keep us down, to keep us dumb, to keep us spiritually defunct, or however you want to describe it. But I think working on ourselves individually to fuel this kind of collective awakening, I think that is the only solution. And I'm by no means perfect. I'm an absolute shithead, but I am trying, doing my wee little bit. But yeah, I think we just have to work on ourselves, and hopefully that will increase the energy to feed back into this kind of planetary Schumann resonance, and let's see what comes. But I'm ready for whatever,
Yeah, I think the Kundalini, Jimmy, I think I've achieved that, unless I really misunderstand what it is. I just think I've achieved. I just can tell in myself when I'm firing, as I call it, right? I mean, I eat an alkaline diet, which I think is really important if you want to see the truth in life. That's not necessarily vegan. It's keep your body alkaline, keep it in the form that Mother Nature created you in, right? And obviously all the stuff like the alcohol and the Kentucky Fried Chicken, that takes you out of that alcohol, makes you acidic, right? And that brings you down off this Kundalini. It's like a high. It's like a high. I go about my day high, but without the drugs now, the knowledge, it's that you get to a certain stage in life, I think, where you've just acquired enough knowledge to step above the bullshit. And again, it's about being on this high. It's about getting to a place where you genuinely can say you love all people. That I think it's okay to recognize that we all have ego, but I think it's really important to be able to recognize when that ego's getting out of check, right? And go, oh, back in a box, what do they call it? Like the chimp theory, isn't it, or something, right? And I'm saying this because I think these people try to poison you all the time. They try to poison your mind. They try to poison your diet. They try to poison your thinking, because then you can't be up here, right? For example, if I have a beer, next morning I'm absolutely not up there, mate. You know, it takes me a whole day, probably a day and a half, and then I've got to go and run around the block. I've got to eat really, you know, just eat vegetables, and then slowly I get back firing again, you know, back to that nice sweet spot. And so yeah, just another sort of lie that's been put on us. But what I was saying earlier is, I think the whole of the narrative that's been created is to enable these greedy sociopaths to manipulate countries like Israel and the UK and the USA and use them as fronts that they hide behind. So yeah, where does it all lead us, mate?
Well, you've segued nicely there, Chris. And whilst we're chatting now, look at the little file. But this is it, yeah. Where is it all leading? You know, as I said earlier, I don't believe that any information now that's out there within the mainstream, or even so say alternative media, if it's out there, it's allowed to be out there. You know, we know how many holistic doctors have been assassinated in the last 5 years. It's crazy. You know, whistleblowers, they get shut down, and you know, information gets scrubbed and suppressed, and some does leak through. But on the whole, you know, what's out there is controlled. It's a controlled narrative, essentially. So, you know, where are we at? We're at the point now, I believe, where we're just waiting for the second wave. I think a lot of people. I think a lot of people are busting for this new vaccine, so they can feel nice and safe after they've had their vaccine. So they'll be the first ones, won't they? They'll be the ones that line up to have this vaccination.
Jimmy, can I just chip in? I'm awfully sorry. I didn't expect we were going to speak this long. It's been amazing.
Okay.
We will need to wrap up in the next 5 minutes, because I've got a very informed gentleman on the podcast.
Lovely.
Again, mate, sorry, I didn't think.
No, that's fine. You know, we can always follow on. It's no problem at all.
No,
we can always follow on.
I think we've covered the bases nicely, haven't we, for today? Did you want to just finish what you're saying? I hate interrupting people.
No, not at all. It's fine. I was just saying, I think we're at a point now where we're just waiting for, you know, the narrative was all Big Donnie Trump and his boyfriend float us. We're going to go up into Air Force One, and we were all going to be locked down, and they were going to show us 16 hours a day of these military tribunals. That didn't come to fruition, and now the narrative is, oh, we've got to get back into power now. It's going to be drip fed over the next 4 years. Well, I'm just thinking to myself, what can they do in the next 4 years? What I would ask people to do is look into something called the sentient world simulation. It's something that's recently come across my path, again, from my dear brother Justin Danneman, who's working on a book actually at the moment, which is going to be awesome for anyone who is into this kind of thing, called The Ghost of War. The sooner he gets out, the better, because it's a cracker. But it focuses, that's one of the tangents within this sentient world simulation, which we'll leave it as a kind of a spoiler, not a spoiler, but a lead on for the next chat. But yeah, check out the sentient world simulation and have a question and ask yourself, why is that not out there? Why is that not in the mainstream? Why is that not in the alternative media? Why are we not hearing about it? Because that's the next level. That's what the serious business is. The sentient world simulation, this so-called 5D ascension, Neuralink, AI, it's all coming together. That's the plan. But Chris, we'll follow on with that next time, I think. But it's been an absolute pleasure this evening. I've really enjoyed it. Thank you.
Oh, Jim, I always love talking to you, because you're a real leveler, mate. Likewise. You know, you're a real leveler. You don't get too carried away with stuff. Dolly Daydream, just need a massive thank you for Dolly. Dolly very kindly spent about 2 hours on the phone with me yesterday, just getting me familiar with the Q movement, so I knew all the basis about it. Dolly's got a channel. Dolly, if you want to put a comment below the video so people know where to find your channel, do that. And I look forward to talking to you again soon. To everyone at home, questions for me and Jim, put them below the video. Don't put them in the chat, because that gets deleted, which probably isn't a bad thing with the amount of J words that's been in it tonight, because certain people won't like that, right? But we mean no harm. We're not anti anything, Jim. We accept love. That's it.
Humanity, that's all. Brothers of humanity.
Love is the only way. And as I said, I've been to Israel twice, mate, and I've just met wonderful people like there, as I have pretty much everywhere I've been. Been around the world. So, friends, if you could all like and subscribe, please, because if you think that we've got something worth talking about here, please subscribe and hit the notification thing. I'll say thank you to all. Massive love to you at home. Thanks for joining us, Jimmy. I'm just gonna play out. There it is.
Thank you, guys. It's been a pleasure.
Jim,
really
I won't stay on the line for Jimmy because I've got a guy straight after, and we're going to be talking about some exciting things. So big love to you, mate, and let's speak soon, yeah? Hello, friend. I hope this finds you well. My name's Chris Thrall. I'm a former Royal Marines Commando, and I fought my way back from chronic trauma and addiction to live, work and travel in 80 countries across all 7 continents, achieving all of my dreams and goals along the way. Now I pass my simple system on to other people, but I can only help you if you like and subscribe. So please do so, because you get one life, and if you live it right, one is enough. Hello, friend. I hope this finds you well. My name's Chris Thrall. I'm a former Royal Marines Commando, and I fought my way back